Hey all, and welcome back to Professor Layton and the Curious Village. This time we are covering Chapter 7, The Abandoned Park, and while we will be getting to the park eventually, as with what's happened quite a lot since we've first arrived in St. Mystere here, we are going to have to go on a little bit of a goose chase finding out how to make our way in, because it seems a little bit locked right now. And although it doesn't seem like the most secure thing, I don't really think a true gentleman climbs over the fence, so we need to find how we actually legitimately get our way in, and that does involve talking to Rodney again. I've made a few jokes about Rodney over the course of the playthrough from what I recall, but I will say he is quite a difficult character to read in a certain way, because he comes off as a little bit, I guess, unlikable to a certain degree, in the fact that he seems maybe like he doesn't like Layton and Luke that much, and sometimes it feels like he's trying to get rid of us, and like as though he's got this persona up of trying to be the man who does everything by the book as a way to kind of put us off. But that could also be a genuine thing. Like, some people legitimately are like that. They just like everything to be official and in writing and done as it's supposed to be done. And they don't necessarily mean malice by it, but it can also come off as a little bit unpleasant to other people. And basically what I'm saying is I'm neurotic and I know people don't like that. But what he has done is he has told us to go look for the caretaker. And the first place we are going to look for said caretaker is down in the sewer, which is lovely. But this gentleman here is not the caretaker. This is Pavel, and Pavel's gimmick, his character trait, is seems to be a hiker of some sort, a traveller, a hiker, something like that. And he somehow found his way down into the sewer. He's lost. That is what's going on here. I guess he's got a little bit that Leon from Pokemon Sword and Shield thing going on of he doesn't know how to get where he wants to go, and maybe he just saw this hole down in the floor and thought, you know what, maybe the train station's down there. Maybe that's where I need to go. I don't know. Like I can't really talk too much. I am the kind of person who stays inside a lot, but when I go out, if I have to find somewhere I haven't been before, I'm a little bit screwed. And like, I'm really not one for public transport or anything like that. I tend to... It's an anxiety thing, but I tend to be quite insecure about finding my way around. And if I've got to find my way on foot, then I've got my phone on. It's a really old phone, but it does support maps, thankfully, so I can just type in where I need to go and basically follow the arrow like it's Crazy Taxi or something. But I'm a shut-in, and it's quite obvious. But first puzzle of the chapter. This is puzzle 120, Get the Ball Out 3. And yes, we are doing this before Get the Ball Out 2 and Get the Ball Out 1, but that's just the order we found them. Now, this particular puzzle, what you need to do is, it's a very simple in concept kind of puzzle, in that you just need to get the ball from the top to the bottom. But you need to move around the blocks, and this is another one of those that is going to take me quite a long time to pull off, because I was using a guide for this, but as you can probably imagine, looking at a guide on a screen and then relaying it down to the 3DS screen and like trying not to lose track of where I was, that did take a little while, so I apologise for the hold up whenever we get puzzles like this, but it was either this or me try and do it without the guide, which would have taken probably 10 times longer. I will say I've never been good with stuff like this. I know this is quite a common kind of puzzle. You get stuff like this, and then you get stuff like the solitaire games where you got to get the balls from one side of the board to the other. And sometimes you have the versions that are like you can move a ball over the top of another ball and then that will take it off, and you've got to get rid of all of those from the board, and like so you win. And like growing up, I didn't really have much experience with those. Like I played a few of them. I think both of my grandparents had things like that they'd just keep around the house and we'd play with from time to time. But I mostly remember playing more card-based kind of solitaire games. Like Solitaire itself, Klondike Solitaire, that is something that when I got my first laptop, I remember playing quite a bit of that, just pre-installed on Windows. And, like, I am very much the stereotype millennial who hasn't played physical games that much, and I'm mostly playing digital games, and I know that carries over to Let's Plays and video games and stuff like that. So, they're fun for what they are, but I just don't really have all that much experience myself personally. But why is Stash and Scarfin down in the sewer? Like, wasn't he waiting outside the inn earlier? I don't know what purpose he would have loitering down here. Seems a little bit unnecessary and out his way, but we'll see what he has to say for himself. Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying, Stashin. What he's saying in layman's terms is that this is the wrong way and we should have gone the other way, but he is a character in the game who's quite important, and that means that he's likely to have a puzzle. So, Stash and Scarfin's next puzzle is which boxes to move. So this is another puzzle that kind of seems like taking laziness to the extreme. Like if you're the kind of person who you can think quickly, but you don't necessarily want to pick up heavy boxes, and you're just trying to work out how many boxes need to be moved in order to label all of them. And like, some of these puzzles, I will say, in terms of the explanations they give you and the setup and whatnot, they're a little bit contrived. And I know that this is such a fucking basic bitch piece of observational commentary to be bringing up in chapter 7 of all things. But like, I mean, come on, you just get all the boxes out, you write it in the same place on top, and then it's easier to keep everything tidy and easy to find what's like where the label is when you unpack them later on. And I don't know, I'm putting way too much thought into the framing device for a puzzle in a puzzle game. I'm well aware of that. This artwork doesn't look too great when it's zoomed out like that, but the actual environment art there, not Layton and Luke, but the actual shot of the river and the Layton mobile over on the right, that is really pretty, and it's kind of hard to make stuff like that look good with such a small resolution, so to pull it off like that, that's quite impressive. But this puzzle here, Puzzle 85 Train Speed, this is a maths one, and per the convention with maths ones in this playthrough, I don't really have much to say about it. The answer is 60.
How does this sound?
But we'll say, I'll talk about the low resolution. I know that the mobile phone version of Curious Village has some HD artwork. It's been a long time since I saw that, but I seem to recall what I saw. Bearing in mind I was only going with YouTube videos for reference there. But I seem to recall it being a bit of a downgrade stylistically. Like, they've got HD portraits and whatnot, and it's sharper and it's cleaner, but I feel like for the kind of game and the kind of setting that Professor Layton is set in, I think the slightly lower resolution, almost kind of painted look that the DS games have going for them, I think this is stylistically really cool. Like, there are some games that do suffer from being upscaled and remastered, and I realise that this is a very subjective thing, but it's something that, you know, and it might also be the fact that I played the DS version before seeing anything of the HD one, but I don't know, like, I feel like this is the kind of game that it works really well on the DS. It, like, both in terms of the DS as a system and also the look that they went with the DS version here. Just having the very small 4:3 screen and trying to make a paintwork style without over complicating things with the low resolution. That, honestly, it works out better here than it does on the phone to me. But Sylvain here, the caretaker, he has a puzzle 86, squares and circles. And this one, it's a pretty easy one. The answer's 4.
Here's my answer.
This is one that I did just clock onto myself pretty quickly, so no complaints there. So now we've completed this puzzle, I hope this means that he can actually open the gate for us, because I've got to say, it's not really gentlemanlike behaviour to be standing around in a sewer, even if it is a really well drawn sewer. From an art perspective, there's only so much you can do with a sewer, but damn, they've made the best of it. And that was an oddly satisfying gate opening sound, I will say. But, like with last time when we found a new area in St. Mystere, with last time's one being the streets round the back that go toward the tower, this time around we are actually getting into the park and we'll be able to explore a fair few different areas in the park actually. It's not just the one screen that you might imagine, just seeing that tiny little bit going in there. There's actually a lot to do in the park, a lot to see. So that's what we're going to be doing for the bulk of this chapter actually. And one thing that you'll notice right away that may, I guess, raise a few eyebrows, pique your curiosity and other such. Are they adverbs? I don't know, I'm not good with grammar, as much of a nitpicky little shit as I am, but yeah, this is quite well built up. It looks like there's a fair few attractions for an abandoned park. It's one thing to have an abandoned park that's just like, you know, a big empty field, maybe a few stalls, a few attractions that are unattended, whereas this looks like it's got quite a lot going on for something that hasn't been touched in a very long time. Like pretty much every other abandoned park I can think of from video games that I've seen. Like the top one that's coming to mind is the one from Detroit Become Human in Kara's story, where it's like, you know, all the androids are there looking after shit, but it is still dilapidated. But yeah, before I go into my comparison stuff, we do have a drawing there of Flora, and what this is telling us is that a little girl who not only had a very wealthy father who wanted everything for her, but on top of that, he also built a park for her. Like, that's the level of spoilt child that she had going on, and most people in that situation would grow up to be little shits, so I'm a little bit nervous about actually meeting her. Like, could she maybe not be the most grateful person in the world? Well, we'll see in due time, but yeah, going back to my other abandoned park areas, it's kind of bad in a tonal dissonance sense, but the other abandoned park that's coming to memory is from the campaign mode of Call of Duty 4. There's that one area that's near a Ferris wheel, and there's a Ferris wheel in this park, and that's why it's coming to mind. But that's the one where you have I believe it was a flashback chapter where you and the lieutenant above you were kind of co-oping, and this was during a part where the guy who was along with you had crippled himself. I think it got crippled by a helicopter that had fallen, and he only barely survived that. But you spend the second half of the chapter having to carry him over your shoulder while fighting off the guys coming after you. And the tail end of that chapter, it's kind of a pain. But here is puzzle 115, Odd Box Out. This is a visual puzzle, and you've got to essentially mentally deconstruct the boxes and see which one would have to have the cube faces in different places.
I think I've got it.
Which, these ones, we have seen a few of these so far, but I'm not the best at visualising those particular ones. I imagine, again, this is another kind of puzzle where they would expect you to maybe draw things out if you're not the kind of person who can visualise this stuff. I feel like this is one of those things that comes back to your learning style. It's something that I remember being talked about a lot when I was in school, that there's some people who are visual learners, there's some people who are oral learners, and there's some people who are kinetic learners, I think it is, the one where you learn things by doing. So there would be the visual and kinetic ones where you would find benefit from just drawing out the faces maybe and seeing which one works and which one doesn't. And maybe if you're not that way inclined, then it might be a little bit more difficult. I'm clearly not that way inclined. I can't remember what result I got from the test. Like, I don't even remember if I'm remembering that right, but there are a few of these things I remember from school that kind of crop back up. The one that sticks with me a lot is academic essay writing style, that I find myself doing quite a lot in commentary these days, in that there's a very specific writing formula for essays, in that you make a point, you give evidence, and you analyse that evidence. And once you realise that you're doing that formula over and over and over, you start to feel a bit insecure about your own critique. That is one of my things that when I approach commentary from a critical perspective, it kind of leans into an academic approach quite a lot. And I know that's my style and what I do, but you know, sometimes I do try to change it up as well. But here is a puzzle 87 Ferris wheel riddle. And the trick here is that you've got to work out how many rounds it does, like how many people, like the maximum number of people that could have rode the Ferris wheel during its opening hours. But the trick is that during the first cycle, you're not going to have a full Ferris wheel, and during the last cycle, you're not going to have a full Ferris wheel. And that's the part that you have to remember to deduct that when you're trying to work it out. It's one of them that's much easier to process once you realise it, but not really that easy to explain. I've made a right rat's ass of it just then, I realise. So yeah, as it's described in there, it's some of the cars are going to be unoccupied. Ferris wheels, how I feel about them, it ultimately comes down to how fast they're moving. I remember when I was young, there was one that I went on with my parents, and I really didn't like it because it was just a spin around as quickly as possible kind of Ferris wheel. It was meant as a kind of thrill ride sort of thing, which I don't really get any benefit from that. Like, I'm not really the kind of person who gets sick from that G-force like some people do, but I just don't particularly find it a pleasant experience. Whereas the other one that I remember is the good old London Eye. The one that if you go to London and you want to see the whole city, you go on the Eye, and when it gets to the top, you can have a look across and see the Thames and see all the different attractions there are in London. And I don't live close to London. Like, it's not in walking distance. You'd have to get on a train or you'd have to go on a car trip. But I'm close enough that they're areas that are quite meaningful to me. I really think that London is a pretty city despite some of its shortcomings, so I did appreciate that. But here we have puzzle 88. This is Leaky Tank. And what I remember most from this particular puzzle is the artwork with the toad. So, like, how can you start thinking about maths puzzles when you got a little toad pouring water into a bucket and then a bigger toad waiting for the stuff that leaks out. I'm sorry, I can't really pay attention to the puzzle itself when I'm looking at that. Maybe I'm just very easily amused. In fact, I would say I'm very easily amused. But again, it is part of this game's charm. The artwork is consistently very appealing. So if that's my takeaway from it, if that's what I'm going to remember from the game, that's what I'm going to remember from the game. Even if it is just toads. They're more memorable than the toads from Mario, I can say that much. But yeah, little jabs aside, so the toads from Mario, they're the kind of characters that they do their job. I know the biggest beef that people have with the toads is that they overuse them in the RPGs more so than memorable original characters, which I understand the criticism. I'll get to playing the Mario RPGs aside from the Super Nintendo Super Mario RPG one day. In time, maybe I'll cover them on the channel, maybe I won't. But this puzzle here, 116, the largest total, is a maths puzzle, so again, I don't really have much to say. This seems to be quite heavy on the maths puzzle, this chapter, I'm noticing. We had the train speed one, we had the one with the Ferris wheel and the which boxes to move, them ones. There's quite a few, like, they tend to sprinkle them in evenly for the most part, but I'm just noticing in this particular part, it's standing out to me. Maybe it's because I'm in a bit more of a manic mood tonight for some reason. I'm really not sure why that is. Like, I'm recording this at 3:45 in the morning, which I'm usually tired by now, but I guess I've just had me tea. I've been playing a bit of Pokemon TCG online, and I don't know, I'm full of life. Like, maybe it's the excitement from the new Sword and Shield TCG set that's sinking in. Even if I have been playing with the Inteleon deck tonight, which is the weakest of the three. But we have more lore just laying on the ground, and I'm starting to feel like we were meant to see this. You can kind of understand seeing a couple of scraps of paper from someone's diary, but after a while it starts to feel a little bit convenient. We did already kind of piece that together from the sign, but I don't know if it's explicitly mentioned it in the earlier scraps of paper or not. I honestly can't remember because I mostly just take away the gist of these rather than remembering them specifically, but it's pretty clear cut now that where this is coming from is whoever was commissioned to design this park. And they were doing it specifically for Flora. God, I can't talk. For Flora. And why they were doing it for her, what, like, the father's mindset behind making this park was, we don't quite know, and that's something that we're gonna have to start piecing together over time. I've got to say, this music next to a quiet lake, like, it just makes me want to sit down on a park bench and just relax. You know, it's again a very tonal appreciation thing, but this what's doing it for me more so than just the gentle atmosphere. I like how closed in this park is, the fact that there's trees surrounding it entirely. And that's just a general mood thing that I love. I'm a little bit claustrophobic when it's too close, but when it's just quiet and peaceful, I love it.
Hmm? What on earth?
Professor!
Hurry, Luke! Run!
Professor, I think he's chasing after us!
That's preposterous! Blast.
So as I was saying about this park being quiet and peaceful, I enjoy that cutscene's direction a lot. It's the moment when it's chasing after them and then they change direction and it moves behind them. Like, obviously we saw the remote control at the end there, but that is just the exact moment of, oh fuck, this is wrong. This isn't meant to be happening, and that's when it just dawns on you. And yeah, I would not like to be having to run away from that. I've got to say that much. I would have got trampled. I'm not a fast runner. At least not these days. I used to be when I was a little kid in school. On the plus side with this thing, it has opened the door that was previously locked, so we don't have another fetch quest for a key, we haven't got to go find someone else to open it, we haven't got to go bother the caretaker again, we can just go underground. I know there's a jam song called Going Underground, though I can't actually remember how it goes off the top of my head. So, first things first, we've got to work out where we're going, and to do that, we might want to have a little look at this odd stone tablet, which is very clearly a map. So, Puzzle 89, Which Way? This is arguably the easiest puzzle that we've seen through this entire chapter so far. You've just got to find the hidden arrow, and the arrow itself, once you find it, it will point you in the right direction. So there is a little bit of just looking at all the different lines that are there and seeing which one forms that yellow arrow shape that you can see on the right, but it's a visual puzzle and it's the easiest kind of visual puzzle. So if you just see where I'm drawing the red line right now, this is where it is. And I'm not sure how pernickety that gets with accurately drawing over the line. It let me take it on my first go here, so it's obviously not too sensitive, even if I'm not the most even-handed. I'm a left-hander trying to draw on the right side of something, and I'm not the smoothest at drawing straight lines, as you saw there, and the DS touchscreen I know is not the most accurate touchscreen in the world, but he registered it, so it's obviously not too much of a problem. I have heard some people complain that they have issues with the screen registering, but maybe I just got lucky. I'm not sure. The DS screen and by extension the 3DS touchscreen, they're not completely accurate. There is still a little bit of leeway where it could be improved, but I do honestly prefer those touchscreens for this kind of game over the Switch touchscreen. And the game that made that obvious to me is Mario Maker 2. Because Mario Maker 1 on the Wii U, it used the stylus old style touchscreen, and it's very easy to move things around when you're making the levels. But for Mario Maker 2 with the new ones, it's designed as a touchscreen that you use your finger on, and that means it's more accessible, but it's also much less accurate. And even when you get the stylus specifically designed for it, like I got one as a pre-order bundle, but I know you can buy separate Switch touchscreens. Touch pens even. They're just not as accurate as the Wii U, DS, 3DS ones. Which is kind of unfortunate for that kind of game, because that's the game that really benefits from having accurate touch controls. I'm not sure how many other games there are that use the touchscreen quite as much on the Switch, because the Switch, it's got that whole combo thing, and I prefer playing games on the TV whenever I can, but that's just me. Some people prefer handhelds. But yes, this particular puzzle here, it's the same as the last Get the Ball Out one. Same concept, different execution. This is puzzle 90, Get the Ball Out 2. And I still don't remember doing Get the Ball Out 1. Actually, come to think of it, that might have been one of the ones we did on the back streets. I don't know, because there are a few puzzles that I had to resort to a guide to. I think I might be getting this one confused with the apples and oranges one. Easier than it looks, isn't it? I don't necessarily agree there. I did have some trouble with those puzzles. But something I want to go back to a little bit, given we've got a fair bit of time until the next puzzle now. I was talking about how some games, when they get HD versions, they don't look quite as appealing, or they look a little bit lacking compared to their original versions from a stylistic sense. I'm going to talk about that for a little bit more here, because this particular event on screen is just me piecing together the different painting scraps that we found over the course of the game, and I'm going to just get on with that in my own time. But the other one that stands out to me a lot, in a similar genre actually, are the Phoenix Wright games, because they recently had a HD trilogy on the Switch and PC, and I think it might be on the PS4 and Xbox One as well, but I'm not sure about those. But they were originally on the DS, upscale from the Japanese Game Boy Advance games, and while I haven't played them, and maybe I wouldn't mind the HD versions as much if I just played those in context of the game rather than looking at footage, but it feels like some of the charm that you get from the sprite art in those games, it's lost. I feel, as far as I understand the process they've used, they have drawn original character portraits. They haven't just put a cutout filter over it or anything like that. But it kind of looks like they have. That's the kind of problem I get looking at the artwork from those games, the HD versions. Because it is quite hard to recreate sprite art in a not sprite art format, and if that's the direction they're taking, it's kind of an uphill battle, and I appreciate that. But it just makes me wonder why they didn't just try to, upscale the Game Boy Advance one even further, or even just use the assets and nearest neighbour them up, or even just create higher resolution sprite art, although to be fair that would be quite difficult to do because high resolution sprites are hard to make nice. But there are some other games that do fare better when they're transferred from one art style to another, because recently at the time of recording this we saw the demo release of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon DX, which is a remake on the Switch of the Game Boy Advance and DS original Mystery Dungeon games. And what they've done with that is, instead of trying to just recreate the sprite art with drawings like the Phoenix Wright games did, with that one they're taking a different approach, and they've got a kind of soft painting or soft book illustration thing going on with it. And the best comparison that I can make is, it reminds me of the Winnie the Pooh levels from Kingdom Hearts. If you've been to the 100 Acre Woods in KH1, that's the kind of art style that it's got going for it. And it actually complements the game really well, like the game's general art direction. It looks really nice. And if we do get more games that are gonna have this approach of taking a sprite game and trying to make higher resolution remakes of it, I feel like that is one approach you can take that works well. Then with more modern games, you can kind of get away with creating new textures for existing properties, like the way that the Halo remakes have done it, Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary and whatnot. That looks nice there, but you can't really do that with sprite art. But while I've been talking about that, we have pieced together the painting. It's not really that much. It's basically just a bonus challenge that you get that you can unlock. Like I said earlier in the playthrough, I'm not necessarily going to be showing those off in this playthrough, but I felt like it'd be a good idea to show where you can get all the different bits and pieces, like the different painting scraps. So if you've been following this along with a walkthrough, then now you can save the game, turn the DS off, reload it, and then you'll have some bonus content waiting for you. Feels like there might be a puzzle in here. And judging by my doggo jumping out, it feels like there might also be hint coins here. I've always loved the idea of having a little secret underground hideaway like this. I am a big kid really when it comes to it. But how comfy would this place be if you just, like, on your own, just relaxing, just taking it easy? If me talking about this and talking about the Quiet Cloisterton Park earlier didn't tip you off, then yeah, I am a bit of a recluse. So we have found a mysterious key here. That's gonna be another mystery that we sort of hold on to for now. It's got the tower on it, so by my genius deduction, I get the feeling it might help us unlock the tower. So that is a chapter 7 complete, but before we leave here, we do have another hidden puzzle to have a look at here. I like how they do this particular puzzle as a really difficult puzzle because it's one of the hidden ones, but this is puzzle 91, picture matching. So you've got to pay attention to the patterns that is ongoing there, and try to work out which one's missing. As you can see, the pattern that's going on there, it's diagonals. So if you find one that just fits all the diagonal lines and keeps up that pattern, then that's the one you want. It's B. So yeah, this one, I noticed that looking at it back now. I didn't actually notice the diagonals when I was playing this, and I feel really stupid now. I guess hindsight is 2020 and whatnot, but Christ, like that is much easier than my brain made it when I was working this out for myself. This was one that I did have to have a look at the guide for. But this other factor going on here is the in puzzle. As you may have noticed, each time we've been given an item, I've either sent it to Luke or to Layton. And I've been sending it to the one that it's intended for straight away, so we're not going to have to faff around much here. But if you did send it to the wrong person by mistake or because you didn't know, that really doesn't matter, because what you can do here is you can go into it and you can send it from one room to the other, no trouble. And it is a little bit obscure which ones are which. Some of them are kind of obvious if you pay attention to their characters, but some of them you might have an easier time if you just look up a guide for this, if I'm being honest. Like the puzzles, I can say a lot of them are fun to work out yourself. But this one, when it is a little bit hard to work out from the information they give you, I don't think there's any shame in just looking it up, honestly. But again, that's another one that unlocks a little bit of bonus content that you can get through saving the game and reloading it on your DS. Like before you pick your save file, it's either before you pick your save file or as you're picking your save file, you can just pick the bonuses and you'll be able to get all the goodies you've unlocked. But I feel like it might be an idea to get back to the village, preferably before that little hidden cavern place falls in on us, maybe. I don't know how securely that was built. The rides and that look stable enough. The guy who was writing us letters, it seems like he knew what he was doing, but the little hideaway, maybe that was less of a priority. Maybe that wasn't quite as important. But it seems like someone might be after us, and we might see what's going on there in Chapter 8 of Professor Layton and the Curious Village. See you then.